soon. Thank you. When the makeup people get out of the room, we'll be okay.
Hopefully, the
Mhm.
dog in the back of my apartment that decided that he had a lot to say is done with
Okay.
his conversation as well, because he
And
felt
hope.
really strongly about something just now, and I hope that that's resolved.
Okay.
Hope
Okay.
that he's
That's good.
moved on to something else.
Okay. So I think we're about ready to start. I hope. I see the, can you see the light? I can see the light.
Yep, I
But
see the recording light.
okay. Well, when it flips, then we know we're on.
You fancy. You got studio quality situations happening.
No, I guess just got a little leader.
You got a good team. You got a good
do.
team.
I do. I told you. All right. Hi. Hello. My name is Dr. Rosa Sales, and I'm the president of the EZRA Project. I want to welcome you to Shift. This is the EZRA Project's monthly interview program that allows us to explore a number of topics with you that might be of interest to you that maybe you thought about, maybe you didn't think about, but we're glad that you're able to join us tonight on Shift. If you have any questions about the EZRA Project, then by all means, visit our webpage. It's at www.theezraproject.com. We try to resource the faith community with topics every day and things going on. So please join our website at, again, www.theezraproject.com. We want to resource the church. That's our purpose. And that is to help members of the faith community, whether it's churches, pastors, ministers, or bench members. We want to resource the church and talk about those things and bring up those things that encourage the church. One other purpose of the the EZRA Project is to have those conversations that sometimes are difficult to have. And therefore, as we talk tonight, this might be one of those times. I want you to feel free to go to the chat and enter your questions or your comments. And also, if you want to later, you can also email us at the Ezra at ezrafactor@gmail.com. So you can visit our website, www.theezraproject.com, or send an email to ezrafactor@gmail.com. And by all means, enter something in chat so we know that you're out there listening. So our topic tonight is interesting because it's infertility and other reproductive issues. And also, I want to talk, we're going to be talking a little bit about exactly what it means in the Black community to face some of the issues that we face in our own healthcare. When we talk about infertility, that's often skewed in the Black community by conversations that are either wrought with stereotypes, misinformation, fear, superstition, and we don't really talk about the issue. For example, think about how many women you know who suffer with fibroids or suffer from endometriosis. We talk about those as harrowing and unfortunate medical issues, but we never really connect the dots and say this is about reproductive health. Or all those commercials on television now about little blue pills and ED, but you never really had a conversation that has anything to do with male infertility, even though male infertility is the main factor in 1/3 of the couples who are struggling to have children. The CDC says infertility is what happens or what we describe when a couple has tried for a year and been unsuccessful to have children. So we talk about these, we make assumptions about what's known and not known, but we never really have frank discussions. And so that's why I'm so pleased tonight that we have with us Regina Townsend, the founder of the Broken Brown Egg. And we just want to share with Regina, share with us about this issue. And her website says the Broken Brown Egg exists to empower, inform, and advocate for those questioning or experiencing the impact of infertility, with an emphasis on the Black community. So, Regina, thank you for being with us. Regina is a youth librarian. She's by career. She's a writer by passion. And as you can see from these pictures, she's a wife and a mother by love. So thank you, Regina, for joining us. So glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. This is like
Yeah.
a big deal to me.
Well, we appreciate it because we think you're a pretty big deal too. When I advertised this, I advertised it as infertility as the quiet crisis in the Black community. Um, do you think that's a fair depiction of the situation? And how has this whole issue of reproductive health impacted our community?
Well, unfortunately, yes, that is a very accurate description of it because infertility affects Black women at 2 times a higher rate than our white counterparts, and yet
Wow.
we are least likely to seek treatment.
Hmm.
Infertility affects 7.3 million people in the United States. So that's 1 in 6 couples, 1 in 8 women.
Mm.
And for that to be something that's affecting that many people, that means that's somebody that we know who we may not have ever talked to about it and had no idea what they're dealing with. And I know from my own experience of infertility and also from the people who've spoken to me, infertility is traumatic. It changes what you think or thought about yourself, about your relationship, about your faith, about so many components of your life. And also some of the things that may be causing infertility, such as fibroids or endometriosis or adenomyosis, require surgeries, recovery times. So you end up spending, in some cases, years just trying to get an answer and then may not ever walk away with a baby. And that's traumatic because you've now gone through a very serious surgical procedure in some cases. And in many people's experience, they never told anybody. So they were going through all of this and nobody knew that they'd been back and forth through surgery and that they'd had a hysterectomy and that they'd, considered whether or not their marriage was going to last or left the church, or there's so many other things going on. And it affects your mental health. And so it is absolutely a crisis. And the fact that attention isn't placed on it makes it also a social justice issue, because similar to what we're seeing with the Black maternal mortality crisis, all those things are connected because now we're struggling to get pregnant, to stay pregnant, to raise children. So it's affecting our quality of life on so many levels. So it is absolutely a crisis.
Okay, and we're going to hope that our conversation tonight is going to stop it from being as silent as it has been, because we need to talk about these things. As we talked earlier before the program started, so many mothers don't talk to their daughters. I don't know if men don't talk to their sons, or probably not, but these are things that we need to pay close attention to. So you're the founder of the Broken Brown Egg, and I know that that was born both out of your passion as well as your pain. So why don't you tell us about how the Broken Brown Egg came to be?
Sure. So I was a member of an online message board called Chocolate Brides, which was founded by Keisha Monk. She used to be a radio personality here in Chicago on WGCI, and she's a voiceover actress that people may hear on like BET Awards and things like that. And when she was getting married, she noticed that Black people were not represented in the bridal industry. And so she started Chocolate Bride so that people could communicate and kind of just speak to people who get it. And on that site, having that, which was pre-Facebook,
Mhm.
Black women found that it was community. And so they stayed after they got married. And I remember there were 1 or 2 people who mentioned either IVF or secondary infertility, which is when you've had one child naturally, but then when you attempt to get pregnant again, it doesn't happen.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, that's really interesting. I didn't know Black people had infertility. I hope that works out for them. And I just kind of moved on, praying for them and kept moving. And when Jabari and I got married, we waited a couple of years. And then when we decided to expand our family, we realized nothing was happening. And that's counterculture to what you're taught in sex ed or even just TV. And
Yes.
so when we were looking into it and we discovered that I had hypothyroid issues that were causing ridiculous periods that would last months long.
Mm.
And they would just give me birth control pills. And I didn't have insurance sometimes. So I'd be sitting in the county for hours waiting for somebody to see me. And the idea from people was, well, if that's periods are just hard. So here's some birth control pills and some Tylenol and you'll be all right. But nobody was investigating why this was happening. And so we were nearing our 5th anniversary, and I told him I really wanted to do something for other people who were experiencing what we were experiencing. And he was like, okay, cool, let's do that. And so that's when I started moving towards the blog and writing, because I also wanted to get the things out that were in my head. And I wanted to, when I had been looking for blogs to get information about infertility, I didn't see anybody that looked like me. And I was like, okay, so I can't be the only, I can't be the only Black person with this issue. And I got so angry that I was just like, we have to talk about this, because I cannot be the only person. And I don't want somebody else somewhere feeling like they are the only person. So I started the blog and started communicating with people and just sharing my story. And I started getting a ton of people messaging me that were just saying, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I can't talk about that with my family. Nobody in my family knows we've been trying for 3 years. Like, I got all of those kind of messages. And we held a gala here in Chicago to raise funds. And we just really, I just kept going after that. I just kept blogging. And what was important to me was telling the story as it was happening, rather than what we usually see is people come out after they have what they consider to be the happy ending, which is the baby. And then they're like, oh, and we, 2 years ago, we did this. But for me, it was really important to say, no, today I went to the doctor and today this is how I felt. And right now I'm angry and this is what I'm doing tomorrow. Because that I felt was so missing when I was looking for something. I wanted actual representation that made me feel less alone. And then also just sharing resources, because people don't know how to find they don't know how to find them. They don't know where to start. When you first find out that you're having issues, you're first just shocked that you're having issues, especially as a Black person. You're thinking something must be really wrong with me because I don't know any other Black people experiencing this. So
Mhm.
you're so shocked, you don't know where to start. And so it was really important to me to have a resource list that showed, here's where you can go for funding. Here's somebody that's talking about fibroids. Here's somebody that's talking about this. Go over to their site. And then also to destigmatize it by also showing celebrities. So on my site, I have always had a running list of, here are celebrities that that are Black, who have had in vitro, who have had a surrogate, who have dealt with fibroids or PCOS, because even though they aren't, they have different socioeconomic help, they at least can give you a face that you can connect with. You can look at Angela Bassett and say, oh, I know her. She had a surrogate. You can look at LeVar Burton and say, okay, Rita Rainbow, you did IVF. All right, cool. It helps you to feel normal, because it takes so much of your feeling of normal away. So having that site was empowering for me, but also informative for others. And I've just made it a commitment that I'm just going to keep going with it, because new people get on this train every day.
It's interesting that you say that, because as a librarian, I think your site really shows that you as a librarian know how to search out information for people. And so there's all kinds of stuff there, including books for children, so it's really interesting. I urge any of you who have not seen Regina's page, have not seen The Broken Brown Egg, I really urge you to go and see it. I love this picture of you. That is so cute. I urge you to go and check out The Broken Brown Egg. It is really just amazing what's there, what information is there. Now, you and Jabari have a son named Judah, and your journey, you said a little bit about it, but is there anything else you want to share with us, and kind of explain some of the terms like IVF, or many of the
Absolutely.
old.
Absolutely. Yes.
I
So I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So that's insulin resistance. My mom had hyperthyroid.
Right.
And so I didn't know that there was an opposite of that. So when I was in high school, my mom lost a ton of weight. She had a goiter on her neck, but I still didn't know what a thyroid did. So I just knew that she was going to the doctor for it and taking medication. Well, when I was 16, I started to have these ridiculous periods, and my weight, no matter what I did, I could not lose weight. And so through testing and ultrasound on my thyroid, they diagnosed me with hypothyroidism. So when I was having these lengthy periods, what they would do is they would just give me birth control pills. And when I got married and when we decided to expand our family, the periods were not only longer, but the thyroid medication wasn't doing anything to stop that. And the doctors that I was going to, the mentality was, well, take the thyroid medicine and the birth control pills. And when you want to get pregnant, being pregnant will stop the period. But nobody was saying, well, what happens if you don't get pregnant? And so I went to the first doctor that I told that I wanted to get pregnant and that nothing was happening. And she gave me a medication called Clomid. And Clomid is supposed to spark the body into ovulating. And that's when the body produces follicles that produce where the egg and all that. So she gave me Clomid. When I came back, she said, well, are you pregnant? And I said, well, no, that's why I came back to you. And at that point, she gave me a medication called metformin. And most people know of metformin as a diabetes drug. And it is to help with insulin resistance, which also induces ovulation. So it helps your body to be more sensitive and able to absorb insulin properly so that your body will kick into gear and do what it's supposed to do. Well, that didn't work either. And at that point, I was like, something is not, nobody is doing any follow-up. There was no other, I was like, there's no other testing. There's nothing else happening. And a doctor who was following my site actually reached out to me because he was visiting Chicago. And when I met with him and his wife, he said, I'm looking at, there's darker patches on your skin. And I read what you were saying about your weight. I think you have what's called polycystic ovary syndrome, and that's PCOS. So polycystic ovary syndrome is a syndrome where it's usually identifiable by multiple cysts in the ovaries. But it also is a form of insulin resistance, a very high form of insulin resistance. So it causes your body to produce more androgens, which is the opposite of estrogen. So like male hormones, so facial hair or skin tags, different issues with your skin, inability to lose weight, brittle or thinning hair, a lot of different things. And it can also be people who are underweight. So I had never heard of PCOS before. And so he said, I think you should talk to your doctor the next time you go, because I think that could be the actual culprit. And that's something that's treatable in terms of diet and exercise and perhaps going back on metformin, but with a clearer understanding. And so I went back to the doctor and I told her, this was a new doctor, I told her that I thought I had PCOS, and she kind of laughed it off. And she was like, it's not that, because you don't have any cysts. And we did an ultrasound and I don't see any cysts. So everybody's got Google these days and they think they're the doctor. And she just kind of brushed it off. And I was so angry because I just wanted an answer. I wanted to understand why things weren't working and we weren't getting any answers. And she was not available when I needed a follow-up appointment. And so I went to see her colleague and I kind of tested her with the same thing. I said, I think it might be PCOS. I've done my research and I think it might be PCOS. And she said, I agree with you. I think it is. If that's what you think, then that's what we'll look into. And we'll do another ultrasound if you want. But let's look into that. And I've been with her ever since because she's the first doctor who made me feel heard and who was on the team with me. She was doing her part, but I was doing my part. And we did metformin again. Nothing happened. And then she did what's called an HSG test, and that's a hysterosalpingogram. And that is where they inject dye into the uterus and fallopian tubes to see if there are any blockages that might be getting in the way. And we found out that both of my fallopian tubes were completely blocked. So none of the things that they had been giving me for at that point, the past 5 years, were ever going to work because my tubes had been completely blocked the entire time. So at that point, she said, you know what, Regina, you've done everything that you could do. Because she knew I didn't want to do in vitro fertilization, which is IVF, because it requires a lot of needles and I'm not the one for the needles. And she said, I know that's not what you want to do, but you've done everything that you could. And that's going to be the next step. You're going to need to do that to get around the tubes, because in vitro fertilization, basically the medication that they give you stimulates your body into ovulating more than it normally would. And then the fertility center does what is called an egg retrieval, where they look at those mature follicles and they retrieve the eggs. And then they collect sperm and they fertilize them outside of the body. And then if they form embryos, they will place the embryo back.
Okay.
So it's expensive, it's time consuming, it's physically taxing. And it was terrifying to me. And I just did not want to go that route. But that was the only way to get around the tubal issues. And so she sent us to a fertility center. And that meeting is usually where things get real, because they start to go over a lot of things that you're not expecting. So they start to ask you, first of all, they tell you how much it all going to cost. And that part is rough. Because medication included. Thankfully, Illinois is a mandated state. So fertility coverage is included in health insurance in Illinois. Okay. But it is only mandated in about 16 or 17 states, I believe. Other states consider it elective. They don't consider fertility treatment as something that is necessary. And so they don't look at it as a disease, which it is. Yeah. But thankfully it was covered in Illinois, and it may not cover everything. In some cases, it may not cover the medication. There may be only a certain amount of rounds of IVF you can do. And so they start laying out all those costs, and it gets really, really tight in that room. Then they also start asking you questions like, if one of you dies, who gets the embryos in storage? Wow. If you get divorced, who gets this? And so it gets real faster than you expect it to.
You kind of just think that stuff only happens on television.
Yeah. Like you sitting there and you be like, this ain't, how did we get here? This isn't, I wasn't prepared for this conversation. And they're doing this all day with multiple patients. So it's old hat to them. Meanwhile, you're sitting there like, this is really crazy. And I don't know how I got here. And then you also get angry that you even had to be there, that this is even, you start to think nobody else has to deal with this. Why is this, I don't know, nobody else that has to do all of this. And then we found out that we had sperm issues as well. Okay. So now we had to, again, figure out, is that going to affect anything? What does that mean? And how are we going to work through that? And then my job changed insurance carriers, and I lost access to the clinic. And we were devastated because we were like, well, now what? We finally got to that point. And then we had, Jabari had a cousin who was pregnant, who didn't believe she'd be able to parent. And she asked if we'd be willing to step in and adopt. And so we considered adoption, and we prayed about it. We actually went to family, and we all got together and prayed about it and tried to see what God wanted us to do. And we thought, well, maybe this is why things aren't working. Because you start to do God's math. You start going, well, maybe he didn't do this like this because he was finna do this. You don't know. But we assumed that that's why, maybe things weren't working because God wanted us to do this. Right. And that very well could still be the case, Jesus. But we decided to adopt, and we got all the way to the hospital to pick up the baby. And the social worker called and said that she'd had a change of heart. Oh, wow. But that there were extenuating circumstances that meant she could not take the baby home with her right away. And so they wanted to know if we'd be willing to step in as foster parents instead. And we prayed again because we were like, I don't know if I even want to do this, because that is when you're already struggling, you have to think about what that emotional tax is going to be.
Yeah.
And so, but we, knowing who we are, we couldn't leave a baby at the hospital without somebody to come get her. And we couldn't just let her go into a system where the family may never get her back out of. So
Right.
we went and got her and we fostered her for 6 or 7 months. And at the end of that time, it was kind of like, okay, what are we going to do? Because that was a lot. And I
Yeah.
can't have, as my pastor calls it, purposeless pain. There has to be something that comes from all of this. And at that time, because education and the broken brown egg had still been a very, very much part of what I do, I had been hosting events at the library to talk to people about pathways to parenthood. So I would invite a reproductive endocrinologist, those are the fertility specialist doctors. I would invite someone from DCFS, someone from the Cradle, which is an adoption agency in Evanston, and an adoption attorney. And we would have just an open conversation about what people could expect from each of those routes. And the doctor who would come, she was very sweet. And she said, "What's going on with you, Regina? Because I know last time we talked, you were already moving towards something." And I was like, "Nothing is going on with me." And I told her about our insurance issues. And she said, "Come see me. I'll take your insurance. Come see me." And because you can't keep helping everybody else and not moving
Wow.
at all for yourself. Come see me. And so we went to see her, and she saw all of the things that we had up against us. So my AMH level, that's your anti-mullerian hormone, that indicates how many eggs you have. When we are born as women, we're born with all the eggs we're ever going to have.
Hmm.
And the anti-mullerian hormone shows how many of them you may still have, or whether you may be going into early menopause, or if it may just be something that you should consider egg freezing or something to preserve your fertility. So when they did my AMH level, the doctor was like, "It's supposed to be like 2, and yours is a 21. And
Oh,
on paper, that sounds like that's a great thing. You got tons of eggs." But what it really looked like from the medical standpoint was, when we move forward with the fertility medications, your body can go into hyperdrive, and that would cause what they call hyperstimulation. And then they'd have to cancel the entire cycle because it would be dangerous to me and dangerous to the quality of the eggs and all of that. So we had so many things up against us, but she had such a positive demeanor. She had a completely different outlook on, and honestly, to be clear, she was clear on this is what God wants me to help you with. And she was very much about saying that and saying, God helped me and I want to help you. And we're going to move forward, whatever it looks like, we're going to figure it out. And that positive attitude, after so many years of trying, that was part of the medicine.
right. Right.
Having that positive attitude. And from that, we moved forward with in vitro. And that led to Judah.
Yeah.
And he is now a grown man in his 4-year-old life.
I'm going to ask our engineer, Lolita, if she would put the picture back up so we can see you and Jabari and Judah, because he is indeed a doll. And we are just so grateful that God blessed you after all that work. How old is Judah now?
He is
As
4, he'll
of
be 5 in June.
wow, time flew. He'll be 5.
5 going on 45.
Now let me ask you, because you said on your website, and I've heard you say before, that infertility is bigger than babies. What does that
Mhm.
mean? What does that mean?
I think a lot of people's perception of infertility, first of all, looking at from the mainstream society, they see it as elective, like I was saying, in terms of the treatments and the what's um, covered under insurance. They see it as elective. And you have celebrities, for every great encouraging story, you have one that goes, "What are you talking about?" And so we have people like Paris Hilton who will come out and say that her and her partner are doing IVF and that they get to choose the gender or they get to choose the number. And so people have a perception that that's really what it is. You just want to do that because you want to be in control.
I know, baby.
Yeah. And it's just, and there's also a perception that we have that people who are struggling to get pregnant or who don't have children are desperate. They're going to steal your baby or they're a horrible person. You know, you think about movies and how it's perceived.
Mhm.
The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, or Bebe's Kids, or there's all of these different perceptions of what it means to want children, that when it comes down to it, people think it's just about the baby. And
Mm.
when they only deal with the baby part, they ignore the fact that it is a financial trauma, it is a physical trauma, it is an emotional trauma. There are people who get divorced after dealing with infertility. There
Mm.
are people who, you know, stop going to their church after dealing with infertility. It affects so many different layers and levels that it is so much more than just a baby. And that these issues that people are dealing with that are causing the infertility are serious medical issues.
Right.
Some of the people that we have historically fighting for reproductive rights or just Black justice in general, like Fannie Lou Hamer, she started her activism because she was given a hysterectomy without her consent.
Mm.
Mahalia Jackson, hysterectomy for fibroids.
Wow.
Josephine Baker, hysterectomy, fibroids, multiple surgeries. All of these things have come about because, you know, there's this misconception that people just want babies and they don't look at the history and see where, no, this is a health issue that's been affecting us for years.
Yes.
And it's something that has gone hand in hand with the implicit biases and the medical mistreatment that's come upon Black people. And so if we don't address the mental health concerns of it, the physical health concerns of it, the socioeconomic and access issues of it, it's a disservice to people of color. It is absolutely a social justice issue when we go to the doctor and they tell us, well, you should just lose weight. I had a doctor who told, one of the first doctors I went to see, before she would give me a prescription for Clomid, she said, you need to just lose 30 pounds. Well, madam, I live in a food desert. So
Right.
this just lose 30 pounds that you speak of, also to go work out, which you probably can do in your nice neighborhood, I got to go to the YMCA in Roseland.
Right.
That's not easy for me. So
Right.
the conversation of how we deal with people of color, it comes across as almost though you need to earn your right to want to have children. You know, if you can't afford to just go to the gym, maybe you don't need kids anyway. If you can't take better care of your health, and that judgment erases the systematic racism of it all. It just,
I got all these questions. Okay, I'm trying to figure out which one I want to ask you first. The first question I want to ask you is, I've heard you talk about, while we're talking about these medical issues, I've heard you talk about healthcare as a team project. And right now, people are dealing with long haul issues of COVID. They're dealing with, do I take the shot? Do I not? The whole Johnson, Pfizer says there's another shot later on, and now everybody's freaking out like, oh God, I thought it was permanent for life. So how is this a team issue? Talk to us for a second about how to be an advocate. You've described yourself as an advocate, but you're a librarian. So, librarians have like these books. So how should the rest of us?
I'm also a Hudson, and that's part of it.
There you go. There you go. It's in the blood. It's in the blood.
It's in the blood. But being a self-advocate, it means simpler things than I think people think it does. It means being unafraid to just ask a question. Sometimes there are times when I think back on doctor's appointments and I think, while I'm frustrated that that didn't go the way I wanted it to, I could have asked her, I don't agree with that. Can you explain why you're doing that? And so us who do have experience with advocacy, one of the things that we can do is help give tools to people for whom that's not their normal or natural response. So telling them, like I tell people on my site, take a pen and a pad and a plan to every appointment. so that when you go, you've already thought about what I want to ask when I get here. What's
Okay.
important to me? What's the most important thing to me? Because oftentimes you can go in and the doctor starts talking about what they saw in the chart, and you never got to ask the question that was burning before you got there. So if
Yeah.
you have a pad with you where you write down before you go, ask about my blood sugar, ask about this test. Then when you go, you have something to look at so that you can say, wait a minute, I wanted to ask you about this.
Yeah.
The other thing I tell people to do is take somebody with you. Now, I know it's COVID and you can't physically take somebody with you, but just like we're doing right now, you can virtually take somebody with you. You can put somebody on the phone that has either speakerphone or video phone so that they can hear what's being said to you. So that when you hear something that you're so busy processing, they can catch what you maybe didn't catch that was probably a biased statement. People experience so many things that they don't realize. You know, we, especially as Black people, we have those things where we go, I feel like that was racist, but I don't know if that was racist. You know, I have people who tell me that they've gone, you know, for appointments with their children or whatever, and they're there with their spouse, or they were in labor and they went and their spouse was with them, and the nurses will say something like, it's great that your baby's father is here with you. And it's like, so the assumption is we don't get married. Okay, cool.
There you go.
So little things like that get said. I had somebody who told me once, I had an appointment while I was pregnant with Judah, and he wasn't moving a lot. And it was because we were tired. It had been a long week, but the nurse, she gave me like some crackers or something. And when she noticed that that made him move, she looked at my purse, which I got as a gift, but it was a Burberry purse. And she looked at it and she said, well, see there, Miss Burberry, your baby was hungry. And so this idea that we as Black people don't take good care of ourselves and therefore don't deserve adequate and equitable care is such a myth. But we can catch that better if we have a plan when we go in
Yeah.
and when we have somebody with us, because they can help ask the questions, ask for a second opinion, and you can fire your doctor. This is
Yes.
your
Yes.
team.
I
So
have.
you can cut somebody from the team. You can be like, you know what? Thank you for your service. It was wonderful. Be well, go with God. You could cut people from the team at any time, because
Good.
it's better to live with that moment of discomfort than to live with regret. You know, my grandmother has been gone nearly 25 years almost.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that my mom and my aunt and my uncle still feel like there are things they wish they had asked. There are things, there are options they wish that they had been
Yeah.
presented. And
Yeah.
they struggle with that. And
Yeah.
that regret is heavy.
Yeah.
So that discomfort is worth it for lack of that regret.
That's good. That's good. I like that. A pen, a pad, and a plan. I like that. Let me ask you also, because you talked about people leaving the church. The church, and this is the way I see it as a Bible teacher, the church very often puts this whole conversation about women and babies in a Hannah and Sarah mode. So if you
Mhm.
don't have children, then you're cursed by God. There's something wrong with you. Okay. So now we live in a different time, but my sense is that those same stereotypes have made their way in.
Yep.
So, you go to church and like you talk about your celebrities. Beyonce said the worst question anybody ever asked her is, "Are you pregnant yet?" People in churches expect you to have children, expect that certain thing, or they, if you don't have children, then you're ready to volunteer for everything that comes up.
Yeah. Your
You know,
time is open.
it's free. Yeah. So how should the church respond? What does the church have a responsibility? What would you like to see churches do around this issue?
I think having open and honest conversations that people don't have to search so hard for is vital. A lot of times the church gives information about what it feels is important. So we'll have, something for seniors about their blood sugar or heart disease. We'll have something, on issues that we think are important. But
Mhm.
we will make somebody then come and call the church to ask for can somebody pray with me about infertility? And
Mhm.
then we have Mother's Day at church, which a lot of people, those the CMEs, as they call them, that only come for Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter.
Yeah.
Well, Mother's Day is difficult for a lot of people for a lot of reasons, not even just because they are struggling, but there are people who have lost their children. The Sunday before Mother's Day is actually bereaved Mother's Day.
Mm.
And the Saturday before Mother's Day, I believe, is Birth Mother's Day. So there are people who have placed children for adoption that
Yeah.
want to be recognized and acknowledged. There are people who have lost children or had multiple miscarriages that want to be acknowledged. And then another thing that I heard, because I put this on the Broken Brown Egg as a question a couple of times, and I posted it again yesterday and got a tremendous amount of responses. But
Mhm.
one of the other things was when Father's Day comes around, even though some churches have started to recognize those who want children for Mother's Day, when Father's Day comes around, they don't do the same for men. And
Mm.
so even in that tells people, it starts to make them feel like I don't belong here. And then some of the stories that include women of the Bible, sometimes the way that they're taught make you feel as though if my faith was stronger, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have this affliction.
Exactly.
And we know that that's not necessarily, though, those things are not mutually exclusive. And one of the things that somebody responded to me yesterday when I posted it was, I would love it if the church would show rather than say that they'll weep with those who weep. And I thought that that was a beautiful way of putting it, because that is something that people sometimes want. They don't want to be told, pray more or come to this special prayer and we'll help you. Because the
Mhm.
truth of the matter is, everybody is not going to walk away with a baby. They're
Yeah.
not. They're
Yeah.
going to make different decisions, or some decisions are going to be made for them. So it's better for us to acknowledge that people are struggling with this emotionally and show how God is a balm for that, and
Mhm.
how, even when you want to say his grace is sufficient, you may not be feeling it. And here's how we can support you through that. There are some churches who are doing a great job by having support groups,
Mhm.
by having just conversations around it, or having additional conversation during the Mother's Day season. But there is so much more that can be done that actually I think would encourage more people to just find ways to serve, because there are a lot of people who just have felt so disillusioned, or they feel like they're always told, well, just pray. Or I had one person who told me that her pastor told her, well, look, everybody in the Bible that really, really, really wanted a kid got blessed eventually. And she was like, but that may not happen to me.
Right.
And also, we're not going to deal with the emotional trauma that Rachel might have been in. Like,
Right.
like there are things that are left out
Yeah.
that, if we really want people to find God and find peace in their relationship with Christ, we can't leave them in a state where they're questioning their value to God. And that's what happens when this isn't working for you and you see it working for everyone else, and you're reading scripture that says that all things work together for the good of them. You're thinking, well, do I not love God enough? Because I don't see it working together for my good. So I must not. Or am I expendable to God? Is he mad at me? Did I do something wrong?
Mm.
Is he there? So when it comes to the church, it just really is going to be acknowledging it and acknowledging the pain of it, and not wanting to rush and put a Band-Aid where God is actually asking that there is healing that comes from letting some air get to it. And I think that that's one of the best ways that we're going to see people feel like the church is responding to their actual needs.
That's good. I want to just take us sideways right here. Um, everybody's meeting on Zoom. The world is coming back, except that we have those states where they don't have masks, and so we don't know if the world is coming back or not. But
They clowning.
are you available for churches, for groups who want to have you talk to them? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Okay. So they can just go on your website and
Yeah, they could just go. There's a contact form on my site. There's also a page for people who are interested in having me speak or teach a class. But if people are just looking for advice on how do I broach this subject, and also Resolve, which is the National Infertility Association, they have put together a toolkit for clergy that is on their site, and that I can put that link. I can share that link in the notes of this chat when we're done, so that people can find it. But this is something that a lot of organizations are trying to connect with the church on, because this is a new environment. And if we want to reach people where they are, as Jesus did, we have to look really honestly at where people are. So there is a toolkit from Resolve. And then there's also NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. They also have a toolkit for clergy regarding mental health. And mental health is a part of the reproductive health conversation as well, because there is, like I said, infertility is trauma. And then there's also the emotional trauma of miscarriage, because infertility does include miscarriage. It's the inability to get or stay pregnant. So it is including of miscarriage. So having mental health resources a part of this conversation is important too.
That's really good. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure that I even get some of that. The Broken Brown Egg is doing some fantastic stuff. Do you have something coming up? What kind of impact? Well, we've been talking about the impact that it's making, but this is National Infertility Awareness Week.
It starts
Yeah.
this weekend.
Okay.
This week is Black Maternal Health Week, and it's beautiful because it rolls right into National Infertility Awareness Week.
Black Maternal Health Week.
Black Maternal Health Week, because the Black maternal mortality crisis is something that we really also should be paying attention to, because Black mothers are dying at 3 times the rate of white mothers in childbirth. Black children have a higher rate of dying before their first birthday. There's studies that are coming out about how Black infants have better rates of care if they're cared for by physicians of color. So there's so much going on regarding Black women's reproductive health. And so this week, the Black Mamas Matter Alliance actually started Black Maternal Health Week a few years ago. And this year it was actually recognized by the White House. And so it is actually a real official thing now. And then next week starts National Infertility Awareness Week. And that was started by Resolve, the National Infertility Association. And it is a week-long celebration of infertility, advocacy. People are going to have events on Facebook, social media, everywhere. And it's grown over the years. When I first started the Broken Brown Egg, you could barely see anybody, really, really talking from the advocacy standpoint other than the big organizations. And now there's so many amazing patient advocates and patient advocates of color that
Okay.
it's going to be a great, great week. So I have next week, I have an event just about every single night. So I'm gonna be burning the candle at both ends, because I'm at the library in the daytime, and then at night it is all about the Broken Brown Egg and celebrating National Infertility Awareness Week and making sure that there is representation. So next week I'll have one event with Black Millennials for Flint. So next week, Earth Day is also a part of next week. So we're going to be talking about the environmental factors that can affect fertility. I'll also be on the Tammy Mack show, the Tammy Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. And it's going to be a part 2 of our conversation about why people should care about Black people and infertility.
Okay.
I'll be speaking with Camille Hammond. She's the founder of the Cade Foundation, which offers grants for people who are experiencing infertility or pursuing adoption. And she actually started, she's a Black woman from the Baltimore area, and she started the Cade Foundation because her mother actually served as the gestational carrier for her triplets. And
Oh, wow.
she realized that if she and her husband, who were both physicians, were having trouble paying for fertility issues, they were really need to help others who weren't even in that socioeconomic class. So she and I are going to be talking about relationships and infertility, because it affects relationships. And then I also do a support group for Fertility Rally, which is an organization that's an ongoing support group and private membership club for those experiencing infertility. And I do a pregnancy after infertility support group where we talk about the emotions that come with being pregnant after infertility, because there is a lot of survivor's guilt, and you lose the community that you may have built while you were going through the infertility, and now you're not really in that community anymore, and you're also not really in the normal mothers either. So so next week is packed
Wow.
on packed on packed.
That's really, who knew all this was even going on? You know, that there are so many places to go. And I'm going to share this. I've told Regina this, for those of you who may not know, because, you know, you can't look at our noses and tell that we're related. Um, Regina is my second cousin. And I never talked about the fact that I didn't have children, that I had endometriosis, that I had this trauma. I was just, you know, as she said, Hudson's, you bear it, you grin it, you keep on going. And I didn't think about it at all. And when she started the broken brown egg, she came to me and said, Rose, didn't you feel like? And I was like, yeah, that's the thing, huh? You know, so I am so grateful for the information, and even more grateful that the Broken Brown Egg and so many organizations are beginning to reach out and help women and men who are going through struggle. Before we leave, I wanted to say you to say something about men, because I know there's some men on here going, yeah, well, I don't care what they say, they're talking about babies. So why don't you talk about men a little bit?
They get left out of the conversation so much. And there is actually a Instagram account called Semen Secrets that is started by a Black man who speaks about he and his wife's experience of dealing with infertility and how the conversations just leave them out. And also they're treated differently even when they're going into the fertility spaces, in terms of respect, in terms of, you know, just the way things are referred to. When people talk about sperm collection, they look at it in this whole scandalous way, when for this person, this is a traumatic experience. And this is not how they intended to build a family with the person that they love. The other thing that's happening is, in many cases, the diagnosis comes to the woman first. They do the testing on women first. So for the male partner, they're just kind of standing back and they feel left out. Like nobody is asking them how they feel. Nobody is really asking them to be involved. They're not even at half the appointments. And so now you're dealing with a spouse that you love who is miserable, and you don't know what to do because you weren't even at the appointment. So you don't know what the doctor said. You don't know why she's upset. You don't know what's going through her head. And then all of a sudden you're called upon to, quote unquote, you know, play your part. And so men are absolutely a part of the conversation. They should be treated with a lot more dignity and respect. And also, the conversation should include them. There are some issues that affect women, such as HPV, that can be passed from a man. And also, like you mentioned, all infertility, 1/3 of it is male factor, meaning that they are either having an issue with sperm production or sperm quality. And so that is traumatic for them, because society has made it so that that is tied directly to their manhood,
Right.
as opposed to saying this is a medical issue where something in your body is not working the way that it was designed to. And so there's so much guilt and shame heaped on them that in many cases they don't even talk to each other about it, because
Yes.
it's such a, you know, tense subject about manhood and masculinity, as opposed to reproductive health, which is what it is. And then also, when it comes to Black men, there's also this stigma that they don't want kids. Kids are heaped upon them. And
Mhm.
in many cases, there are men who want children and they have partners who don't, or they are the one who can't get pregnant. And the male is like, you know, I don't know where I stand. I hear from people all the time who have conversations with their spouses where it's like, maybe you should just divorce me and get somebody who can. And those are devastating conversations, because when these people were dating or engaged, they didn't think they'd have to put their whole relationship on that. But those are the things that are happening. And so respecting men as a part of parenthood in general, because especially Black men are not looked at as, part of parenthood, is so important.
Okay. We're gonna, I gotta, as they say, pay the bills. So real quick, our next program on Shift, we're gonna turn our attention to children and schools, sort of. And that's because our kids have been out of school. They've been going through so much, especially high school seniors. We all know what the class of 2020 went through with virtual proms and virtual graduations and all that sort of thing. But the class of 2021 has to go to college. And so even though they haven't been around counselors, they haven't been around people who could advise them, it's time to think about that. And so next month on Shift, on May the 13th at 7 o'clock on Shift, we'll be interviewing Lisa Lyons and Jackie Griffin. These two women both work at St. Xavier University, and they have both been awarded for the work they've done with students there, both in getting them in school, keeping them in school, seeing to their issues, seeing that they get money, and the advice that they're going to give to parents and to youth. And if your child isn't a senior, it's okay, they will be. So meet us at Shift next time. That's on May 13th at 7 o'clock. And Lisa Lyons' book, The Real Deal, is a really good resource to have. So we'll be talking about that. So we want to meet you on Shift next time. And also, it's time for the Sales Legacy. Some of you may know that we started the Sales Legacy for graduating seniors and seminary students. So graduating seniors who will be graduating in 2020, this year, it's now time to make that application. The award is given, it's a monetary award, and it's given to those students based on the involvement in their churches and giving back to the community. And the student can be going to a college, accredited college, to a junior college, to a trade school. And those students, they're called the Michael Sales Scholars. And they're named after my late husband, and we urge you to apply. It's a $1,000 award. It's not a scholarship, it's an award to kind of thank you and bless young people who are giving back to the community and giving back to their churches. And for those adults who are in seminary, similar, there's a Rosa Sales Legacy Award, and we want you to apply for those. So it's time, go on our webpage, www.theezraproject.com, and get those applications in. And don't forget, on May 13th, we're going to have another Shift. And now, before we go, Regina, I have enjoyed talking to you. I have learned so much. You shifted even what I thought I had shifted when I started. I'm just on 360 shift. But what else would you like for us to know? What else would you like? What do you want to leave us with in terms of what people ought to know about this issue? So I'm gonna give you the last word.
No pressure, though.
I'm sorry, no pressure.
I think the biggest thing that I tell people is that infertility is bigger than babies. And so when we are looking at things the way that we typically do, remember to include those who have a different experience that you may not consider. Back to school time is difficult for people who are struggling to get pregnant or who have lost children. Mother's Day is difficult. Father's Day is difficult. Halloween, which you think, no big deal, but seeing all those cute kids in costumes, somebody somewhere is struggling.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, is what has led me to keep going with the Broken Brown Egg, because if I have learned anything, it is that this has been a tangible representation of the fact that we do not know what other people are dealing with and experiencing every day. And so when we take that compassion into everything that we do and think about the experiences that are unlike our own, that's how we help other people feel seen. And so that is the main thing, is do something that helps somebody else feel seen. They don't have to look like you, sound like you, do what you do, but do something. That's one thing that my grandmother was amazing at. And I really, of course, Rose, but That's one of the things I'm most grateful for my family is we have a way of making people feel seen.
Right.
And I don't think I realized until I was an adult how important a skill that is and how much of a spiritual gift that is. Help somebody to feel seen.
Yes. And I want all of you who are listening tonight to make the Broken Brown Egg be seen. Go on the Broken Brown Egg website. This work is difficult. This work costs money. This work, okay, wait, let me cut that off. This work costs money. Regina's doing a lot. She's working 2 jobs full time because this is full time. She's going international this year, right?
Yeah, there's
She's,
some
she's
stuff
working
happening.
international. Where are you going? Where are you going, real
Well,
quick?
I've been working with some people that are overseas, just in helping them to expand their understanding of what may be different about Black infertility than what they may be speaking about. So in the UK, there's an entirely different level of stuff that they're dealing with, but Black is Black all over this world. And so giving people that cultural competency, that's what we've been doing right now.
That's wonderful. So I want people to help you, support you. Go on the Broken Brown Egg, refer people to the Broken Brown Egg, refer people to Regina, have her speak to your groups and to your churches, and pray for those who are struggling, because it is a struggle. And so pray for those who are struggling, encourage those that you know. You may not talk about it, but it's there. And all of us know somebody. If not ourselves, we know somebody. So thank you, Regina, for being with us. I want to thank our engineer for tonight, Lolita Westbrook, for being so wonderful about making sure this happens. And again, see you on May 13th when we're interviewing Lisa Lyons and Jackie Griffin. And make sure you get those applications. Visit www.theezraproject.com and send us an email at ezrafactor@gmail. God bless you and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful week. And tune in to National Infertility Week. God bless you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah. That was so good.